everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Female Empowered Podcast. I'm your host, Christa Gurka. And if this is the first time you're joining us, this is where we dive into challenges, opportunities, wins, losses, all for female entrepreneurs, specifically running boutique fitness and wellness and healthcare businesses. And today we're going to talk about something that I believe even the most successful and usually the most successful business owners feel unsettled with, and that's like the dreaded slow season. So I've done recently a couple episodes on promotions you can do during the slow season. I've also done some episodes on the mindset around slow seasons. And so that's kind of a little bit more about what we're going to talk about today. We did some on burnout, which, if you're coming into a slow season, might be the perfect time to reorganize, re-strategize, and recoup some of that lost energy and emotional bandwidth. So whether you're talking about like a post New Year's slump, or specifically what we talk about here is like a summer slump, or really any cyclical downturn in your business, it can be unnerving for a lot of us business owners as high achieving, driven women who have poured like our blood, sweat, and tears into this business. It's natural for all of us to feel like antsy when things aren't firing on all cylinders and we have a moment to come up for air, or it's usually not the one moment we come up for air. It's usually like 5 minutes after we're coming up for air, because then we immediately go to like all the negative. Oh, things are slowing down. Maybe that means that people are no longer coming in, or we're not getting new leads, or people are leaving us, or money's not coming in the door, clients are going away, staff's going to get bored, they're going to quit, they're going to complain. So we really put ourselves in this like forward pacing moment of thinking of all the bad things that happen. And what I want to talk a little bit about today is one, where do those thoughts come from? And two, how we can combat them. So, my kids often tell me all the time is like, oh, if they would have made that free throw, or they didn't make that call, we would have won the game. But games, sporting events are not won in the last 5 minutes of game. One call does not determine an entire game, the outcome of an entire game, regardless of how we feel that it does. Because if things had gone differently throughout the whole game, it wouldn't have been left up to that one call. So that gets me back to like in business. So if we're preparing the whole year and understand, chipmunks hoard nuts for the winter, right? For hibernation, and bears. And so like if we're preparing for that slow season, it shouldn't come as such like this awful thing. If anything, it should come to us as, oh, we finally get to breathe, right? So if you set your goals accordingly at the beginning of the year in terms of, okay, we know that July and August might be a little slower. So if I still know that I'm going to generate, or if I want to generate $500,000 in the whole year, but not every month has to be equal in terms of revenue, right? So maybe January, February, March, you're generating a little more revenue. Then it goes a little lower, then it goes a little lower, and then higher. And in the end, it all accumulates to 500,000. So if you're doing things right outside of those slow seasons, right? Outside of those slower or like downturns, you can really lean into enjoying when it does slow down a little bit, when it does open up opportunities for more bandwidth for you to do things. And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today, is like how you can pause, recalibrate, and then pour your energy into different things, especially things that get neglected during like peak operational efficiency, and like when you're just like running around with like a chicken with your head cut off. So the first thing I want to talk about is what I call shiny object syndrome. You've all heard of it. It's like, oh, squirrel, what's going on over there? What can I do? And the reason it's enticing to us is we're like, oh, maybe that will be the one thing that will take my business skyrocketing. Maybe that will be the one thing that'll get me on Oprah, or maybe like that will be the one thing that gets me to $1 million. And I'm here to tell you 90% of the time, it's not that one thing. It's the accumulation of all the little things that you do over time, repetitively, consistently, over and over and over, that get you to that next hurdle. Okay. So one of the biggest pitfalls that we often see during downtimes or when we have more time to think is like, you know, being enticed by these shiny objects, right? So, like when business is booming, as DJ Khaled says, we're hyper focused on execution and we don't have the bandwidth to like take on other things. But when we slow up a little bit, we're like, oh, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could decide to like change my entire business model on a whim, and maybe I'm going to decide to do it overnight. Okay, so I've definitely been there and I'm like, oh, now we should start doing this. And oh, now we should start doing this. And oh, now we should start doing this. And I'm here to tell you, like, it hasn't worked for me. I'm not going to say that it doesn't work for maybe 1% of the population out there, but generally you know, it's like lightning striking twice. Okay. So instead of like going after the next biggest, hottest marketing trend or deciding you're going to enter into like, I don't even know. I can't think of anything else. Instead, how about let's be really, really, really intentional about what we're going to do during the slower time. Okay. Be intentional of it's why I talk about when we say setting goals is like set an intention for the year. So if your intention for the year is growth, is this shiny object going to get you closer to that goal or farther away from your goal? If your intention is optimization and profitability, is this going to get you closer to that goal or farther away from the goal? If the intention is to decrease your workload and have more flexibility, is this thing going to get you closer to that or farther away from that? All right. And let's focus instead on going after all those shiny objects on using this slowness intentionally. Okay. So take this opportunity to really look inward in your business. So start working on the things that you don't have time for. And quite honestly, you've been procrastinating forever. Like maybe it is putting your standard operating procedures together. It's boring. And that's why, and we have to sit down and it takes time and it's like busy work to us. But if you want your business to grow to multiple locations or have more staff or eventually maybe sell it, having an SOP handbook is really important, right? Maybe it's the perfect time to upgrade or transition or migrate to a new software. Okay. Because software migration is brutal and we don't want to do it during the busiest time. So maybe during a slow time is a really great time to say, okay, we're going to bite the bullet. We have a little more bandwidth. There's less clients in the studio. We're going to transition and migrate to a new software now. What about taking a course? What about, people say to me all the time, oh, like, I don't want to start a new business mastermind in the summer because of that. I'm like, no, you should start in the summer because that's when you have more time to focus on like, okay, let me get these things in place so that when our busy time turns around again in the fall, I'm already ready to hit the ground running. All right. Or let's just think about your own personal development. Maybe it's like, I'm going to take the time to read a fictional book this summer, or I'm going to take the time to learn how to crochet this summer, right? Those kind of things, like where you're not doing anything business related, does really reinvigorate our mind and our love of learning and our passion. And then it has these indirect effects on our business that when we go back to the business, we're like reinvigorated to like, I've learned this new skill and I'm, which also helps bring about patience, et cetera, et cetera. So like indirectly, they have really, really great effects on your business. Okay. So let's be really intentional with how you use this time that is a little bit slower. Maybe you take some time off. Maybe that's the best time where other people can take time off. Maybe you go to a continuing education course, or like I said, maybe you just learn how to crochet in the summer. Okay. Give everyone some more space. It's okay to coast, all right, on cruise control for a little bit. It's okay. In fact, I actually think that it works better. Okay. It gives all your systems a chance to re-energize, and then you can, and recharge, and then you start back up again when it's busier. All right. So now that we have the reasons that it's good and some alternatives that you can do during these slow times, and I really want to get into like the mindset of how really you need to intellectually understand the value of a slow season. All right. And how can you actually keep your mind from spiraling? Because I know as high achievers, we really put immense pressure on ourselves to constantly be in growth mode and always having our foot on the gas pedal. And so maybe any type of plateau or regression or coasting feels like an abject failure to us, when in reality, it's just that time that we're putting more fuel in the tank so that we can continue to grow, right? Even Teslas need to be recharged every so often. All right. So, what I'd love to share with you now are just some mantras. Again, I'm really big on mindset. I've talked about that on like the last couple episodes. And one of the reasons I am is because I live with a tremendous amount of anxiety. The ruminating in my head and the reasons like, oh my God, this is going to be, da, 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 da. And I like, it's like diarrhea of bad things in my head. And I've really, really learned to control the way I talk to myself, the way that I view my business, the way I view myself as a business owner. And when I start to get these thoughts that become feelings of anxiety, I really try to take a moment and think about it and think like, is this true? And if it is, can I do something about it? And if I can't, what are some of the things I can tell myself in order to keep myself like that anxiety a little bit at bay? Because myself as a leader being anxious is only going to make everyone around me more anxious. Okay. So this is one I love. I actually got this from one of the other groups that I am in, and it's slow is the new fast. So there was a period in my business when we were transitioning and I said, I'm slowing down to speed up. And that's what I consider like slow times in our business. So slow is the new fast. And it really reminds us that deliberately taking a slower pace to have things, to operate things, allows us to refocus, recharge, and then ultimately, really, like I said, reaccelerate towards our goals in the right direction with renewed energy, with renewed clarity, because maybe it's even a time where you're like, I really thought that was important, but now it's not so important, right? So slow down so that you can speed up more effectively. So slow is the new fast. I like this one. I am creating, not chasing. So that feeling of chasing is what makes us feel overwhelmed, burnt out, like we're always chasing something. Instead, how about we feel like I'm creating, I have prepared for this, and I am no longer chasing that out there. I have achieved what it is. Okay. So use the slowness of the season to lean into the process of becoming the fullest version of who you are and celebrating everything that you have done up until this point. And if it's not exactly where you want it to be, remember that these things take time and be like, okay, I am X much closer than I was 6 months ago. And I know by proof of the fact that I'm X much closer than I was 6 months ago, I will in fact achieve this by the end of the year. Okay. Um, I often say this to people all the time. My self-worth is not defined by my net worth. Okay. Who you are is amazing and full of vitality and joy and deserving of all that you want, regardless of your business, regardless of whether it's a success or a failure, regardless of whether you achieve 7 figures or 5 figures or 6 figures. You, as an individual, as a human being, are worthy in and of itself. Okay. Slowness, slowing down does not diminish your immense role and value as a female entrepreneur and as a woman, as a mother, as a daughter, as a wife. Okay. This one's a cool one. I like this one too. Embrace the ebb, trust the flow. Like if you haven't figured out that there's an ebb and flow to everything, you'll figure it out soon. Even when we're like, forget about even being a business owner, but even as like an instructor. I mean, I remember, and as a PT, like there would be weeks that I'd look at my schedule. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have like 60 people on my schedule. How am I going to manage the week? And those would always happen to be the weeks that somebody would cancel. And then there'd other be weeks that I'd be like, oh my gosh, I only have 30 people on my schedule. How am I going to do that? And those would always be the weeks that at the end of the week, it filled up. Right. And so there's always ebbs and flows. And so, rather than resist the ebb, like have faith that the flow will come back. And there's no reason, especially if you've been in business for a period of time, there's no reason, like look at your numbers from before, look at the data, look at the metrics, look at your KPIs, whatever you want to call them. It shows you that, yeah, there's always an ebb. Like we know that in January, July is always our slowest month. And then usually by like August 20th, we're ramped back up again. Okay. So there's always a flow after the ebb. Okay. And then our business is an infinite game. There are no winners and losers. It's a marathon. And I would say it's an ultra marathon. It's not a sprint. Okay. Consistency eats intensity for breakfast. Okay. So reframe. How can you reframe your perspective from these like short feast cycles of like hustle, hustle, hustle to a sustainable period of time where there is an ebb and flow, where you get to take a time to refuel your gas tank or stop to hydrate along the marathon or take your, I don't know, protein pack or whatever it is, right? Even in marathons, people learn to slow down a little bit, right? Okay. So these are the kind of things that you can tell yourself or post them on a Post-it card or, put it in your office, create, like I said, I've done like lots of podcasts. And if you're watching, if you're listening, you don't know what I'm doing, but I'm showing, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm showing you like these little cards that I get and I have them all over so that I can remind myself, right? Slow is the new fast. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day, like super cliche. Okay. We all have it in us to achieve amazing, great things. And in order to get that achievement, there are times where it just ebbs in a different direction. And that's like the yin and yang of life. Okay. So instead of thinking, what am I doing wrong? And this is really hard for me. Let's embrace this slow time and be like, okay, I'm going to regroup because I know I'm going to knock it out of the park in the fall and we're going to go like gangbusters and we're starting to roll out this new program. And so I'm taking this time to really fuel myself and energize. It's like carbo loading before a race. Okay. If this episode made you think like, oh, maybe summer is a great time for me to invest in a mastermind, we do have enrollment for the inner circle opening up. I'm not sure by the time this episode airs, if we will, at this moment, we have 2 spots open at the time that I'm recording this at the end of May. By the time this airs, if I have people on the wait list that have already been accepted, I'm not sure if we have, but we still have access into our FitBiz Foundations program. And everyone in FitBiz Foundations gets access to upgrade to the inner circle before we open registration to the public. So if you're interested in either of those programs or just figuring out if I'm the right person to achieve your business goals, I invite you to visit my website, christagurka.com. And on that website, you can also find one of my free audio courses all about mindset. So you can go to christagurka.com/mindset audio course, and we'll link that up in the show notes. And you can download and grab my absolutely free mindset audio course. It's all about how you can strengthen your mind to be able to tolerate this crazy entrepreneurial journey that we are on. All right. All right, ladies, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember, slow is the new fast. And until next time, bye for now.